In a magical land, surrounded by lush forests and distant mountains, a group of people dressed as adventurers roamed. Suddenly, they heard a small voice calling out to them. When they turned around, they were amazed to see a talking cat trying to sell them something. Talking animals were extremely rare in their world, so this surprised them greatly. The cat proudly offered them a cherry tomato, but the adventurers were unimpressed. They had expected something more extraordinary, like legendary weapons or mysterious potions. A simple cherry tomato was something they could easily get any time. However, the cat scolded them and said they shouldn't judge the tomatoes without understanding their true value. With doubt in their minds, the adventurers examined the cherry tomato. To their astonishment, they soon discovered its mythical effects. They swarmed the cat, buying up all the tomatoes it had. Intrigued, one adventurer asked where the cat had obtained such remarkable tomatoes. With a mysterious grin, the cat replied that it was a secret. The scene changed to a field where rows of cherry tomatoes thrived under the sun. A man plucked a ripe tomato from a plant and confidently said, "This is how I became the strongest in the world simply by farming." 10 years ago, on a busy day in Seoul, a 99-floor black tower appeared mysteriously in the heart of Gangnam. But this wasn't an isolated event. In total, 100 identical towers appeared simultaneously in different cities around the world. Each country launched investigations into the towers, but they could only determine two facts. The towers were 990 meters tall and made of an incredibly strong material that even nuclear bombs couldn't penetrate. Then, something even more extraordinary occurred. People who had gone missing started emerging from the walls of the tower. Reporters swarmed around them, asking how they ended up inside. The bewildered individuals shared that they had been pulled into a black hole and had awakened on the tower's first floor. These 100 towers were all connected, and those who entered had to choose to be a magician or a warrior. As they progressed through the tower's levels, monsters began to appear, and clearing each level rewarded them with different prizes. One of these rewards was a special ticket that only the awakened could use to freely enter and exit the tower. Regular people needed the ticket to enter and could also become awakened, despite the dangers lurking within. Many wondered why anyone would risk entering a tower filled with monsters and why the towers appeared in the first place. The reason behind the tower's existence remained unknown, but one thing was certain: climbing the tower led to unimaginable wealth, as the items inside were priceless. The Awakened Association announced an increase in the price of Black Tower tickets from 150 million won to 200 million won due to higher demand than supply. A woman in her store watched the news on her smartphone when a young man came to buy vegetables. Expressing her frustration, she said that people were risking their lives just to make money, yet they had to pay 200 million won for it. She asks him if he agrees with her. He hesitantly agrees that she is correct. His name is Sejun, a young man who is 26 years old and trying to save money for something special. He calculates in his mind, considering tuition fees, interest, rent, and other expenses, and he has managed to save a maximum of about 12 million. As he looks at the tall structure, he sighs and wonders when he will ever be able to afford a ticket to the Black Tower, if he ever can. Refusing to give up, Sejun tries to stay positive. He believes there must be a way to save more money. He bought the vegetables at a low price and heard that their value was increasing. Inspired by a commercial featuring his favorite idol, Sarong, from Korea's top girl group, Moonlight Fairy, he decides to try planting the vegetables at home using an automatic vegetable grower. Sejun believes that if he can save enough money to buy a ticket, he might be able to join a good guild when they see his talent, and if he clears the tower, maybe he can propose to Sarong. Lost in his daydream, Sejun walks along with a silly smile on his face. But suddenly, a black hole appears behind him in the empty space. Surprised, Sejun stares at the black hole, his heart racing with excitement about the possibility of his dreams coming true. He closes his eyes, thinking the hole will suck him in like others, but to his surprise, the black hole doesn't transport him anywhere. Confused and scared, he mutters, "Why am I still here?" Before he can think further, the black hole starts to shrink. "No, my future!" Sejun shouts desperately, unwilling to give up on his dreams. Determined to enter the tower at any cost, Sejun rushes into the black hole without thinking. As he disappears into the darkness, he feels his heart pounding in his chest, wondering where he will end up. When Sejun finally comes out of the black hole, he is confused and disoriented. He finds himself on the first floor of the tower, where there should be luxurious chandeliers lighting up the area. But instead, it's a rocky cave with only one way out, the hole in the cave ceiling. Frustrated, he yells, "Where am I?" Trapped and alone, our main character is in a dangerous situation inside the mysterious tower he wanted to enter. He spends a whole day searching for an exit. Unfortunately, the only way out is through the hole in the cave ceiling, but it seems impossible to climb the wall unless he has superpowers like Spider-Man. As he thinks about his fate, his phone alarm suddenly rings and startles him. Despite being lost in this strange place, the alarm assures him that exactly 1 day has passed since he arrived. Hungry and disoriented, he looks through his limited supplies to assess his situation. With only a bottle of water, 27 cherry tomatoes, 10 green onions, 7 pumpkin sweet potatoes, and a washed apple, he has to make his provisions last. He decides to eat the apple first, enjoying its sweetness and the temporary relief it brings. Each bite of the other raw vegetables unexpectedly brings pleasure, surprising him with their flavors and textures. After finishing 1 sweet potato and 5 cherry tomatoes, Sejun takes a green onion and plants the white part of the root in the soft soil where sunlight enters. Then he plants 2 sweet potatoes on the left side and cherry tomatoes on the right side. Suddenly, the ground shakes violently beneath him, causing him pain and confusion. "What's happening?" he mutters as he tries to steady himself. He notices that the light coming from the cave ceiling has turned into a strange blue color. His eyes widen in disbelief as a gigantic black dragon appears in the sky, its roar echoing through the cavern. The sight of the majestic creature flying through the air, bathed in blue light, leaves him amazed. Before he can fully understand what he's seeing, his vision becomes blurry, and he falls unconscious. When he wakes up, our main character struggles to get his bearings. He is shocked to learn that he has been unconscious for 2 whole days. He was shocked when he turned around and saw a big tree behind him. He planted a green onion, but now it had grown into a huge tree. He wondered how it could grow so big. He thought that maybe the mysterious power in the tower had affected not just the green onion, but also other plants he had planted. He found 52 cherry tomato sprouts growing alongside the giant green onion. He decided to harvest the onion, and it was harder than he expected, but he succeeded. He was curious about the taste of the unusual plant, so he took a small bite. Surprisingly, it was extremely spicy, much spicier than he expected. However, it didn't upset his stomach. He thought to himself that at least he wouldn't starve now. He remembered that the sun never set in the tower. On the 10th floor, there was a special event called the Blue Moon, which made the area dark temporarily. The tower had appeared 10 years ago, and the powerful Phoenix Guild had cleared up to the 37th floor. Not much was known about the floors above the 30th. He had seen videos on YouTube about the monsters on each floor, but there was no mention of dragons or lizard-like creatures. He wondered which floor he was on, perhaps a floor no one had reached yet. Suddenly, water droplets fell on his face, and he quickly got up. He wondered if it was raining in the tower, even though the weather was usually nice. Looking up, he saw a clear sky. However, he noticed something moving quickly and got scared, thinking it might be a monster. To his surprise, it was a cute rabbit drooling over his crops. He wondered if the rabbit was a monster too. The rabbit jumped down and used his head as a stepping stone, landing safely on the ground. It hopped over to the green onion plants, and he realized that this rabbit was special. The rabbit pointed at the green onion plants, and he asked if it wanted to eat them. The rabbit responded, and he understood that it wanted to eat. He broke off a leaf of green onion and gave it to the rabbit, which happily accepted. He noticed that the plants had already grown back. He would have to harvest them twice a day at this rate. But the rabbit started making loud sounds, and he realized it wasn't talking to him. He looked up and saw another rabbit approaching. She landed and gave the first rabbit a straw hat and a watering can. They stood before him, and he was surprised to see another rabbit. He asked if they were married, and they confirmed his suspicion. The next day, he watched the rabbits farming and being very happy. He wondered how all of this happened. The rabbits had introduced themselves and asked to live in the cave. They were so cute that he couldn't resist and accepted their request with one condition: they had to help him with farming. Instead of hesitating, the rabbits jumped at him and started cuddling. Now he sat in his spot, watching the rabbits work. He thought they were using their cuteness to control him, but he didn't mind. He asked the rabbits if their tools were special. The husband rabbit had a watering can that seemed to never run out of water, and he suspected the wife rabbit had a magic pocket with all the farming tools she needed. He felt a bit jealous and wished he had such wonderful items. The rabbits finished harvesting the green onions and excitedly showed them to him. He told them to dry the onions and started checking on other crops. But the rabbits were looking at him eagerly and impatiently. They were asking him something, and he understood their request. He said they had passed his test and could live in the cave. The rabbits jumped for joy and started talking among themselves. They rushed to a corner of the cave, and he wondered what they were up to. The wife rabbit gave her husband a shovel, and he started digging. In no time, he made a home for himself and his wife. The wife put a flowery wreath on the door and welcomed her husband inside. However, the husband was exhausted and could barely stand. Sejun approached them and praised the husband for building the house so quickly. The husband gave him a thumbs up, but then his wife blushed and pointed at the door cutely. The husband was scared, but his wife pulled him inside for some private time. Sejun heard the sounds coming from their house and wished the husband well. Although he felt jealous for a moment, he soon got over it. He walked back to his spot, saying it was boring to be alone in the cave. Thanks to the rabbits, he now had someone to help him and something cute to look at. While Sejun speaks, he lies down on the dried onion leaves. Smoke starts coming up from beneath him, and Sejun feels something hot on his back. He quickly stands up and rolls on the ground, feeling as if his back is on fire. Wondering what just happened, he gets up and discovers the cause. The plastic water bottle filled with water was acting like a magnifying glass, burning the dried onion leaves. Sejun had learned from a famous survival show that rubbing 2 dry leaves together might create fire. He had been attempting it for hours without success, becoming increasingly frustrated and disappointed. However, just as he was about to give up, he noticed a tiny spark, filling him with excitement. Intrigued by Sejun's actions, the rabbits came out of their hiding place to investigate. He asked for their help in fanning the embers by blowing on the pile of dried leaves, while he used a bottle as a lens. Together, they persisted in their efforts, and eventually, the leaves ignited into flames. Sejun felt triumphant, reveling in his newfound ability to create fire. He looked at the onion plants and decided to cook them over the open flame. He roasted one stalk, peeled off the charred outer layer, and took a cautious bite. To his surprise, the cooked onion leaf was incredibly delicious, prompting him to exclaim with delight and declare it as tasty. Intrigued by the transformative power of cooking, he eagerly started roasting another one. The rabbits, curious as well, decided to try it themselves. They roasted an onion leaf and their eyes sparkled with pleasure as they tasted the new and delightful flavor. Sejun felt extremely happy as he had finally eaten to his heart's content after several days. After discovering fire with the help of the rabbits, Sejun made torches using green onion leaves and placed them around the cave. This made it easier for him to navigate through the cave, especially in dark areas like the pond. Holding a torch near the pond, he noticed movement in the water. Suddenly, a fish jumped out of the water, narrowly missing Sejun. The fish had leaped with such force that it landed on land and couldn't return to the water. It was the first time Sejun had seen a fish in the cave. He wondered if the fish was attracted to the torch's light, and his intuition proved to be correct. This is how Sejun discovered fish in the cave. He caught the fish, roasted it over the fire, and despite lacking seasoning, found it to be incredibly tasty. The rabbits, surprising him, drooled and asked for their share. Sejun was shocked because he hadn't expected rabbits to eat meat, but considering they were basically monsters, he found it natural. A few days later, the blue moon appeared once again, and Sejun realized that on this level, the blue moon phenomenon occurred every 30 days. He had been relying on his laptop and power bank to charge his phone and keep track of the date, but eventually, their battery ran out. Unable to use his phone any longer, Sejun started marking the days on the cave wall using a stone. So, it has been 61 days, he said. A few days ago, something amazing happened. Sejun witnessed a tired male rabbit opening the door of his house, and in an instant, a group of baby rabbits dashed out. They were the offspring of the rabbit couple that had recently given birth, and they had grown fond of Sejun, considering him their uncle. They ran straight toward Sejun, causing him to fall on the ground. They were incredibly adorable, and Sejun couldn't get enough of their cuteness. Even as they playfully nibbled at his face, he laughed and enjoyed their company. Sejun looked at the sleep-deprived father rabbit and remarked how hard it must be to raise babies. He offered to take care of the little ones for a while so the couple could relax and have breakfast. The cherry tomato plants had begun to bloom, and Sejun took the baby rabbits with him to see them. The babies happily played around the farm while Sejun inspected his plants. The flowers had bloomed, and although they were tomato flowers, Sejun felt as if he had a flower garden that would bear fruit. Pollination was necessary, and he had to do it manually. Sejun used a small stick to transfer pollen between flowers, but all the bending and work strained his back. One baby rabbit stuck its face into a flower and got pollen on its face, causing it to sneeze. Sejun burst into laughter, but then he noticed something amazing: the tomato plants had started producing fruit. After all his hard work, he was finally seeing the results. Overjoyed, he savored the first fruits from his cherry tomato plants and danced with the baby rabbits. On the day before the blue moon, Sejun made preparations to survive it. He extinguished the fire and hid a small bundle of burning leaves under large boulders. He wore clothes made from onion leaves, thinking it would keep him warm and hidden. As the time for the blue moon approached, the rabbits also returned to their homes. Something frightening always happened during the blue moon, but Sejun was confident that they would endure it, just like before. He believed it would be a piece of cake and went into hiding. The blue moon began, and monsters started howling throughout the forest. Sejun wasn't scared, but he was tired and wished for the blue moon to end soon. As a precaution, he had already hidden things with strong odors and was now hiding in a corner. However, since it was difficult to gauge how much time had passed, he grew weary of waiting. The cries of the monsters didn't help either. Even though they were far away, they made him shiver. Hoping that this blue moon would pass without incident, Sejun heard a loud roar. It was different and more intense than the sounds of the other monsters, almost as if it were nearby. Indeed, a gigantic monster was approaching the cave, crushing full-grown trees beneath its feet. It reached the entrance of the cave, which was much smaller compared to its size. The monster stared into the hole, and inside, Sejun stared back at it in astonishment. He was frightened by the enormous bear-like monster in front of him, but fortunately, it hadn't noticed him yet. Sejun realized he should find a better hiding spot before the monsters spotted him. Trembling, he picked up his bag and began moving quietly and slowly. However, taking the bag with him turned out to be a mistake. As he picked up his belongings, the items inside the bag fell, creating a loud noise due to the empty water bottle. The sound caught the monster's attention. Sejun was filled with horror as he looked at his belongings, then glanced up at the beast, which was trying to peer into the cave. Fear overcame him, and he let out a scream, causing the bear to roar in response. After a few moments, Sejun was discovered unconscious, with the rabbits attempting to wake him up. When the baby rabbits' efforts failed, their father gave Sejun a slap, jolting him awake. Still scared from his earlier encounter, Sejun asked the rabbits what had happened to the blue moon. Upon surveying his surroundings, he realized that the blue moon event had ended. The husband rabbit informed Sejun that they found him unconscious and mentioned that he had fainted upon seeing the monster. Curious about what unfolded after that, Sejun wanted to know more. He recollected the incident with a shiver, aware that he had almost lost his life to the monster. Feeling the chill, the wife rabbit started a big fire and fashioned a blanket out of onion leaves. Sejun sat in front of the fire, with the baby rabbits snuggling up to him. The wife rabbit also brought him roasted fish, for which Sejun expressed his gratitude as he ate. Sejun realized that the monster had noticed the plate of food. Perhaps it was due to another creature's presence or the monster's inability to enter the cave through the small entrance, but it left without causing harm. However, there was no guarantee of safety if it returned. Sejun understood that he had been fortunate this time, but things might not go so well in the future. After everything he had been through to survive, he had no desire to die. Sejun concluded that the best plan of action was to eat well and stay alive. While Sejun was eating, the husband rabbit approached him, wanting to show him something. Sejun followed and was astounded by what he discovered, a ripe cherry tomato. However, it was not what he had anticipated. The tomato was blue and gleamed in the sunlight. Sejun was shocked, but the color wasn't the first thing that caught his attention. He bent down and tried to pick up the large ripe fruit, pondering why it was blue. As he contemplated this, a window materialized before him, informing him that he had completed the quest of harvesting the fruit containing the energy of the blue moon. Sejun was dumbfounded. It was hard to believe that the object in front of him was an actual message window. The message on the window changed, stating that the tower manager took an interest in him due to his remarkable achievements. The tower manager had been keeping a close eye on Sejun, but it was not pleased. Confused, Sejun wondered why the tower manager was unhappy with him, and even the husband rabbit was unaware of the situation. Sejun learned that he was not an invited guest and that the tower manager considered it a mistake. The tower manager wanted to eliminate Sejun. Taken aback, he asked the window what it meant. Was it a mistake that he ended up in the tower? Filled with anger, he demanded to be allowed to go home immediately if that were the case. However, the window conveyed that the tower master intended to kill Sejun to erase any evidence of the mistake. Sejun was astonished. He yelled at the screen, stating that he had achieved something remarkable, yet instead of receiving a reward, the manager wanted to kill him. The system window fell silent, leaving Sejun wondering what was happening. The subsequent message he received changed his mood from fear and anger to elation. The tower manager was waking him up. As soon as the message appeared, Sejun felt an aura enveloping him. He couldn't believe it and confirmed with the window that he was officially awake in the tower. He eagerly anticipated discovering which job he would be assigned, hoping for something like a wizard. However, his assigned job turned out to be a tower farmer with a proficiency in F rank. The joy and excitement drained from Sejun's face, leaving him expressionless. The windows continued to provide him with information about his job. It stated that he would never fall ill, be close to nature, and gain experience points by harvesting crops. Sejun was shocked. According to his understanding, there were only warrior and magician job classes in the tower. How could he be a farmer? Commanding the system to open his status window, he found that his talent was ordinary, and all his stats were at level 1. He stared at his status window, fixating on his ordinary talent. Sejun imagined an unlikely future where he successfully cleared the tower. He envisioned himself as the main guest on a late-night talk show, introduced as the man who triumphed in the tower despite having ordinary talent. The host would request applause for Sejun and inquire about his job. Sejun would act cool and respond that he was a tower farmer, captivating everyone. But even in this imaginary scenario, Sejun remained a farmer, which left him frustrated. Succumbing to frustration, Sejun attempted to smash the blue tomato to the ground, claiming he didn't need it. However, when he noticed the frightened and concerned expressions on the rabbits' faces, he stopped. Sejun was startled by the impact his actions had on his friends. He glanced at his farm and then at the tomato in his hand. He realized that he hadn't achieved this alone, everyone had contributed to reaching this point. Sejun made up his mind to continue farming, bringing joy to the rabbits. Sejun examined the blue tomato in his hand, and an information window appeared, providing details about the tomato. It was a magical cherry tomato infused with the power of the blue moon. Not only was it delicious and nutritious, but consuming it would permanently increase one's MP by 0.05. Sejun was astonished. The tomato in his hand was actually an item. Despite its small effect, it was a permanent boost to his stats. Sejun marveled at his own accomplishment. He had managed to grow something so remarkable. However, the tower manager was observing him and remained unsatisfied with the situation. While expressing his gratitude to the rabbits and celebrating their achievement, a message window appeared before Sejun. A quest had been triggered. He was required to offer the blue cherry tomato to the manager. The quest's reward was a job-related skill, and the penalty for refusing was death. Sejun read the entire message and became scared when he saw the penalty of death. He asked the window if it was a joke. In a fit of anger, he accused the administrator of blackmailing him and using the quest as a cover for their actions. Sejun insisted that if the administrator wanted the blue tomato, they should ask for it properly. Playing such underhanded games and pretending to offer choices was unacceptable. Sejun felt a slight sense of relief after venting his anger, but then he remembered the death penalty and politely offered the blue tomato. In Sejun's hands, the tomato disappeared, and he received a message that he had finished the task. The next window showed the reward for the quest, and Sejun was excited to receive it. He had forgotten about it because he had been focused on the death penalty. Sejun praised the tower manager and called him generous. Then he checked the skill he had obtained and opened the quest reward. The reward was the skill sowing at level 1. This skill slightly improved the chances of a seed germinating when planted. Sejun didn't know how to react, but he was definitely disappointed. However, he consoled himself by thinking that as a tower farmer, he couldn't expect much from the reward anyway. He went to the dark parts of the cave with a torch and saw a fish jump out towards the flame. Sejun used a club made of green onion stems and leaves to hit it onto the land. The fish died, and Sejun found out it was a piranha. The information window told him that he gained 2 experience points for it. This was the 5th fish he caught, so now he had a total of 10 experience points. After becoming a farmer, Sejun could collect experience points. He caught several piranhas every day for a few days and reached level 2. He wanted to catch more, but he knew it was a bad idea. He realized he shouldn't harm living things without a reason. Plus, he got valuable protein from the fish. If he killed them all and they went extinct, he wouldn't be able to eat them again. Sejun cooked the fish and called his friends to eat. The baby rabbits were hungrier than their parents and ran towards Sejun, their human uncle. He gave them fish wrapped in onion leaves. They had grown a bit and were eating more than before. Sejun asked them to leave some food for their mom and dad too. One benefit of becoming a farmer was that Sejun could understand the rabbits. He gave them their share, and the rabbits happily ate it. There were special white farmer rabbits that Sejun hadn't heard of before. Based on their name, he realized they were experts in farming, not fighting. That's probably why they weren't well known. The rabbits started flirting while eating, and Sejun wondered what had happened to them. He thought they must have lost their farms and found this cave and him after wandering for some time. He wanted to know if the rabbits had a home to return to, but he couldn't understand them, and they couldn't understand him. Apart from basic farming terms, Sejun expressed his wish to the male rabbit, hoping they could understand each other. But the rabbit didn't understand human language either and looked confused. They finished eating, and Sejun said it was time to go back to the farm. It was an important day for all of them, and the male rabbit was also excited. They reached the farm and found the cherry tomatoes perfectly ripe. Sejun was amazed to see them. They were even better than the tomatoes he brought. The rabbits were also happy to see the red tomato fruits. Sejun felt sentimental as he said it was time to harvest them. They had worked so hard to grow them. They had harvested one before, but it didn't count. Sejun was nervous as he went to pick the first tomato. His hand shook, and the rabbits watched him anxiously. However, Sejun picked a fruit that easily came off the branch. He exclaimed that it was his first cherry tomato, and it had ripened so well. The tomatoes brought more good news. Sejun saw information windows telling him that he had harvested a well-ripened magical cherry tomato and would get 10 experience points for it. Sejun was surprised to learn that these tomatoes were also magical, like the blue tomato. He read their information and found out that when eaten, this tomato could burn 10 grams of fat and increase 0.1 MP, magic points, for 10 minutes. The MP effect could be stacked up to 10 times for a maximum of 1 hour. Although this information was impressive, Sejun's name was mentioned as the cultivator of the tomato, and it was considered an E-grade item with a shelf life of 30 days. Sejun was impressed that even though one tomato's effect was small, eating 10 of them could boost MP by 1. He wondered if the other tomatoes were the same and went to harvest them. He picked the tomatoes, and each one was a ripe magical cherry tomato, except for one that was unripe. He only received 7 experience points for the unripe tomato. Sejun was surprised by his mistake, but he still got 7 experience points, and the unripe fruit turned back into a normal tomato. Sejun now understood that he had to be careful and harvest only well-ripened fruits to get them as items. It was harder than he thought, but Sejun persisted, and his level increased. He was already level 4, so he thought he had harvested enough for the day. He took a tomato and said he should taste it, but the rabbits stamped their feet angrily, and Sejun looked at them. They were upset, so he apologized. Sejun offered the tomatoes to them, saying they had achieved this together, so they should enjoy the rewards together too. The male rabbit was still angry but took a tomato. Sejun suggested they celebrate the successful harvest and everyone should eat. When Sejun ate the tomato, he was amazed. It felt as if he was lying on soft green grass, gazing at the clear night sky. Suddenly, a flare shot into the sky and burst like a firework. Sejun stood up and watched it with his mouth wide open. The fresh scent of grass mixed with the sweet and sour taste of the tomato. Sejun felt a similar sensation to fireworks at a summer festival. He shed a tear of joy as he remembered summer and felt it in the tomato. The female rabbit asked her mate if he understood what Sejun was saying, but he had no idea. The rabbits took the remaining tomatoes and stored them in a makeshift storage area, covering them with onion leaves. Sejun lay down and observed them. He thought the rabbit kids were now old enough to help their parents. He was ready to sleep on onion leaf mattresses and use an eye mask. Sejun remarked that they were indeed the children of Farmer White Rabbits. Sejun knew it was time to sleep as he was feeling tired and was certain that when he woke up tomorrow, another wonderful day awaited him. He lay down and immediately started snoring, but then he received a new quest.